There are a couple of things you should know about the program you're about to watch. Our first guest, GG Allin, has been called the most violent man in rock and roll.
Rock and roll is revenge. Rock and roll is your enemy, and I'm your enemy. You come to my show, you're going to war.
The defense argued Allin was exercising his right of free expression when he defecated on stage and threw feces into the audience.
Narrow-minded, hypocritical puppets of society trying to kill rock and roll, and they can't do it. I've been in jail. I've been arrested over 52 times. I spent 3 years in prison.
When GG was alive, everybody hated it.
Didn't give a what he did to whoever he did it to.
I don't care about anybody or anything except for myself and my mission. And your kids out there, if you got kids out there, they're going to be my kids.
This is GG Allin, and he's a menace to society.
You're a ludicrous weakling, to be
weakling. You are nothing. You
I'm
are
a
that
weakling. I
small
want
on
to
this
live
earth.
till I'm 80 years old.
I mean, you're that big physically.
Punk rock has always been about giving the middle finger to the establishment, but there are enough Johnny Rotten Butter commercials out there to tell you that it doesn't always pan out in the long run.
I buy Country Life because I think it tastes the best.
That's because committing yourself to being truly anti-establishment takes a lot of sacrifice. And when it comes down to it, even punks eventually find themselves wanting to start a family, own a nice house, and live life in peace. But not GG Allin.
There was like a whole lot of these people that didn't want to pay to get in. It was this real preppy type of college. It really sucked. So we let them all in, and they thought, wow, well, we're getting into the show for free. And then I went out and beat the shit out of them, stole their money anyway.
GG Allin is probably the closest anyone in punk got to being ungovernable. He truly did not care about anyone, and he was gonna do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted it. For bad or for worse.
People out there, if you got something I want, what are you the first thing you're going to tell me is, why don't you submit it on paper? Why don't you hold up a picket sign? No, I'll put a gun to your head and I'll take it because I ain't got the time to wait.
Not to spoil the video or anything, but GG Allin is an awful, awful human being. Something GG himself would wear as a badge of honor. But there is something magnetic about a person who is this blatantly open about the darkest aspects of their humanity. And GG has accrued a certain mythical status within the punk community.
That's what rock and roll is all about. It's for the real rebellious people and the real underground. It's not for people like you. It's not for people who wear ties and make money off it. It's for people who live it 24 hours a day.
His live shows especially have become the stuff of legend, being some of the most dangerous, repugnant live performances in the rock and roll canon, and leading to GG's reputation as the most violent man in rock and roll. But how did he get this way? And how far did his obscene antics really go? Well, let's find out. But first, a quick disclaimer. Unfortunately, I've had to do a lot of cutting and censoring to get this video to a state where YouTube is gonna accept it. But if you're interested in seeing the uncensored version, it's available at my brand new Patreon. Now, it's pretty sparse right now, but there's gonna be more content there soon, so check it out.
I get letters from all over the world. People worship me. They come to my shows. I'm gonna the girls. I might the guys. I might have sex.
What makes GG Allin act like GG Allin? The simplest answer is probably unchecked mental illness, and that's definitely a contributing factor.
But in my personal life, I just hang out by myself. I just crawl inside myself and have fun with the demons inside. I don't really...
In 1989, while he was serving time for assault, GG was subject to a mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and while it doesn't diagnose him with anything, it alludes to GG showing signs of antisocial personality disorder, narcissism, and borderline personality disorder.
I mean, my brother was antisocial personality disorder. He was narcissistic, didn't give a what he did to whoever he did it to. He had no conscience. He'd can put a cigarette out in your face and laugh at you.
But that's not the full story, because for GG, the trouble started the day he was born.
The year is 1956. In a cabin in New Hampshire, in the middle of nowhere, lived the Allins. Merle Sr., Arleta, and their baby boy, Merle Jr. Merle Sr. was an archetypical 50s patriarch, except for being the breadwinner part, as he did not have a job. He was also, frankly, a lunatic. One night, he received a vision from Jesus Christ, where he proclaimed that their second child would grow up to be a great man in the vein of the Messiah himself. So when their next child was born, Merle insisted on naming their newborn son Jesus Christ Allin. That's actually where the name GG comes from.
I told little Merle that he had a new brother and his name was Jesus Christ. And he said, Gigi, that's Gigi, my brother Gigi, he said. So I said, oh yeah, Lord.
As you'd imagine, young Jesus Christ did not have a normal childhood.
For the first 10 years of my life, I grew up in the woods in New Hampshire with no running water, no heat, no electricity, and my father was a very violent man, and he would hide things in the yard, and he would hold the kids at gunpoint, and he would kidnap us.
They were getting water from a well and took sponge baths in the sink, and they lived in constant fear of their father.
My father, actually, he had planned an Allin family suicide right up to the point where he had graves dug under the house in the cellar. And, he was planning on it. And then, I think in the middle of the night, my mother had sort of kidnapped us and took us out of that situation.
When Gigi was 10 years old, his mother would take the kids and move back in with Gigi's grandmother, Emma. And Gigi would have his name legally changed from Jesus Christ Allin to Kevin Michael Allin. Gigi would describe the time living with his grandmother as awful. When my mother would go out, we would always have to stay with her. She would always threaten me and Merle that she was going to lock us in the cellar with the rats. But we were poor, and there really was no other way. Gigi's school life wasn't much better. He was a sickly child, struggling with his health throughout most of his early life. He was always put into special classes, which he got harassed about a lot. Another problem that Gigi had and still has is with his bladder. One day he pissed his pants in class, and his teacher made him stand in the corner, so he figured that the whole gig was just a bunch of bullshit.
Despite being surrounded by people for the first time in his life,
Gigi ended up feeling more isolated than ever, and eventually started caring less for people in general.
As a child, I've obviously grown and matured a lot, but I've always sort of felt the exact same way. I've always been a loner. I've never really felt like hanging around with people. I never really cared about anything except myself.
Gigi's one escape was music.
I more or less lost them to their music. They were in their rooms and they were listening to their music.
And my mom let us get out of bed so we could watch the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And that was it. That's what I want to do when I grow up.
The Beatles. Oh my God. Hey Jude. Now there is a classic that I could really burn.
Gigi and Merle's whole existence became dedicated to acquiring as much music as they could, which usually meant either stealing records or stealing money to buy records.
When I was growing up, I stole, I broke into cars, I broke into houses, I sold drugs, and
we would go to department stores and steal records. We would break into cars. My mom even called the cops on us once. Yeah, she found a stash of stolen goods in the closet.
Merle learned to play bass and Gigi learned to play drums, and eventually they started their first band, Little Sisters Date, a double entendre referring both to LSD, which Gigi and Merle were known to sell, and to the fact that Gigi liked girls on the younger side.
How many of you can, at 35 years old, sleep with 16, 12, 13-year-old girls?
And Gigi actually got married super early to his high school sweetheart named Sandy. Sandy got a job at an accounting firm, and Gigi got a job at a bakery. From the outside, it almost looked like Gigi was gearing up to live a normal New Hampshire life, but that was far from the case. In 1976, Gigi and Merle started a new band, Malpractice, where Gigi would once again play drums. Though they found some success, they were generally considered too hard for a New Hampshire audience. They would release one single, Love Tunnel, in 1977.
I see you walking on down the street with every guy in town. Who'll be the one you meet to get you and lay you down?
The single did not perform well and didn't really live up to the intensity of their live performances. Malpractice eventually fizzled out, so Gigi and Merle went off to start another band, The Jabbers, now with Gigi helming the vocals.
How often does this happen to you guys? Ended up with next to nothing for the next one?
A lot of times. We break everything in sight.
Is it worth it for you?
Yep, it makes us happy to break things.
Gigi was already considered a local menace at this point, but he wasn't nearly as bad as he would become later. He'd flip over tables, knock over drinks, make songs with cuss words in them, that sort of thing. Generally, he was more of a nuisance than an outright danger. Still, it was enough to give him the nickname the Madman of Manchester in the local Boston press. Eventually, the Jabbers scrunched up enough money to finance a full-length album.
Madman of Manchester does it again. Always Was and Always Shall Be is the first album by this dynamic performer and his band, The Jabbers.
But it's a great album. Everybody should buy it. And those who didn't review it,
said, oh, I'll be dead. He said, "Great."
Always Was, Is, and Shall Be is just a straight-up good pop-punk album. The songs are catchy, GG's voice is still in good shape, the songs are raunchy but not overbearingly crass, although they were probably a lot edgier at the time. And the band actually knows how to play.
Actually, the guys in the Jabbers were well-crafted musicians. They could all play well and they could all write well. So that's why those songs are so well written. I mean, I wrote them, but they played and the melody was there.
Behind the scenes, though, things were not going well with the Jabbers, and a lot of that was GG's fault. GG decided to call the album Always Was, Is, and Shall Be by GG Allin, not GG Allin and the Jabbers. Besides dropping the Jabbers name, he also dropped the Jabbers picture off the LP and instead replaced it with just the photo of himself. They thought I was an egotistical asshole, but what other band could they play in? After playing with me, your name was mud. GG's antics started becoming more extreme, and he was building more and more animosity with the general public. Local radio stations refused to play him, and critics hated him. GG Allin was a horror show. The band went into the most useless convulsions I have ever seen. The crowd spit on him and dragged him around like a piece of meat. And throughout it all, Mr. Allin seemed oblivious. Behind him, the band fired off loud, dangerous, distorted noise while GG dove onto tables. Although the club owner made a lot of money, he called GG a worthless, gross pig. He didn't like them, and they would never play there again. It was at this point that GG really started letting himself go physically.
How many times a month do you cleanse yourself?
Seriously, I would say probably once a month.
His wife eventually couldn't stand it anymore, and GG wasn't too thrilled about being tied down either, so after 5 years of marriage, they divorced. By now, the Jabbers were getting really sick of touring with GG.
They would rehearse for hours and hours, and they were a really good band. They were tight, but they would go out to shows, and my brother would go out and flip people's tables, or, take somebody's drink and pour it on their head, or pour it in their face, or like that, or start doing and get thrown out,
On top of that, it was getting ridiculously hard for them to find gigs. The state of New Hampshire declared that any club that hosted GG Allin and the Jabbers would have their liquor license revoked. The state of Massachusetts declared GG Allin an enemy of the state.
None of the clubs would book us. We got a letter from the liquor commission saying I was an enemy of the state.
Off stage, GG was relatively cordial and seemingly intelligent, but on stage, GG was starting to lose himself.
Like I say, my adrenaline's so high on stage that I think if somebody came in with a machine gun and shot me, I'd probably keep going for a long time. I'd die, but I think I could really keep going.
At this point, the Jabbers felt that GG was doing anything he could to get attention, at the cost of jeopardizing any chance for a successful music career. In their minds, the GG Allin persona was a complete gimmick. And they do have a point, because despite how it comes across, GG was a master of self-promotion. And he definitely knew how to build an image for himself in the media, even if he denied ever doing so.
Christianity. You do rock and roll. It's a show you put on, but it's not rock and roll, Jerry.
It ain't a show. This is how I live. You see me on the street, I'm not going to be any different. This is not a costume. This is how I live.
And the media. You ask why I seek media attention? I do not. Media attention seeks me. The truth is, GG sought media attention all the time.
GG was a self-promoter right from the beginning. He would do an interview with somebody that had a zine that got 20 people to look at it.
In the early days, GG would spend a good chunk of what little money he made into advertising for zines. Once he started getting big enough, he would write into the zines himself. Here's an example of a young girl voicing her concerns about GG Allin to the punk rock zine Flipside. Maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm wrong, but what is the reason? And what is the meaning of publications like yourself, doing interviews and supporting someone like GG Allin? Now, I by no means am saying I don't think the man has a right to sing about the trash and general stupidity he does. It's fundamental and important for everyone that he does have this right. I don't understand why you choose to support him. GG would respond to this in the following issue of Flipside. This is a response to that 16-year-old who wrote that stupid About me in the last issue. You get it. This was before comment sections were invented. Also, here he is pretending to be his manager, calling to warn the local press about the upcoming GG Allin show.
It's probably around midnight. I'm the manager of the band. They're just hanging out here now. And we're not just promoting the band. I mean, this band has actually been arrested over 52 times. They've been on Geraldo, Jerry Springer.
Here he is straight up calculating his press strategy.
We're basically doing an interview cassette. We're gonna put like the news footage. He's got some photos that we did, and we're gonna sort of put together the ultimate interview package. Because I know when I go to court in Milwaukee, last time I went to court in Milwaukee, Donahue show called. I got arrested, so I never made it. But we got interested in like current affairs.
Yeah, that's the thing. It seems like you would have.
Well, it might happen again. We did the More Down at Junior show.
In case you missed it, he is planning to release a press kit to coincide with his upcoming court hearing because he knows he's gonna go to jail, and he calculates that when that happens, interest in GG Allin will go up as a result. He's not stupid, he knows how to play the media. And despite how repulsive he comes across, it did kinda work. When GG defecated on stage at the Cat Club in NYC and threw it at the crowd, records started selling. They have sold ever since. It's the best-selling local stuff. I don't know why. I think there's definitely some merit to the argument that GG Allin is hamming it up for clout, though that's not to say I think the GG Allin persona is a total fabrication, because even when he says things for shock value, the things he says usually have a backing in reality.
Because I am who I am, and I'm not a phony like everybody else out there. I am real. And how many of you can, at 35 years old, sleep with 16, 12, 13-year-old girls and boys and animals? Hey, this is the life. I got it all.
Like, the reason he's saying that on national television is to piss people off, right? But also, like, he did that shit, man. GG was wearing button-down shirts and taking out the garbage. But since GG hadn't sown his wacky oats, after 5 years of marital bliss, he was off with a 13-year-old. GG liked them young, says Merle. Haha. At the end of the day, GG is not a guy pretending to be a scumbag for attention. He is a scumbag. What really pushed him over the edge, though, was when he started getting rewarded for it. As the rumors about GG started to spread, he found himself constantly having to play catch-up with his ever-growing reputation, effectively trapping him in a feedback loop, where he would do worse and worse things to live up to his own hype. And once the Jabbers disbanded in 1984, things only got further out of control. For example, it was around this time that GG started getting heavily involved with It's safe to say that a lot of GG's more extreme antics were a result of a steady stream of illicit substances. GG was the kind of guy who tried everything. It got to the point where people would just hand him random pills at a concert, and he'd take them without a second thought. Despite this, those around him never really considered GG an addict.
But he wasn't a junkie, and he wasn't, drugs was not his problem. Alcohol was.
Throughout most of his adult life, GG was a raging alcoholic, capable of drinking 2 bottles of whiskey a day.
Buy in bulk, that's my advice.
Because of his insane alcohol consumption, GG often suffered massive mood swings, making him very difficult to put up with for long periods of time. It also made him adopt a very peculiar lifestyle. GG lived very frugally. He rented the smallest, filthiest apartments he could find and lived off of peanut butter sandwiches and a dish he calls ketchup soup. He never bought any clothes and practically never bathed. Sometimes he'd drink so much he would pass out and wake up in a pool of his own urine. He'd remedy this by simply flipping over the mattress. This was partly due to his lack of care for hygiene, but also a way that he could save money for liquor. In many ways, GG's life became an endless struggle to get as much money as he could for as little work as possible. This included stealing from his friends, family, band members, and even his opening bands. But I can be pretty dishonest. I've f***ed over a lot of people. Someone leaves a door unlocked and I'm walking by and no cops are around. I'm gonna go into that house and take something. As he got more and more infamous, he started leveraging his fame to make some quick cash. He'd go on zines and ask for charity, urging his fans to send food, clothes, and money to support his rock and roll mission. Most of what he got sent that he couldn't eat or wear, he pawned for cash. GG made virtually no money from record sales, and most of his records were notoriously out of print. So occasionally you'd get a desperate fan sending GG a few bucks in the mail in hopes of buying a record directly from him. But GG doesn't have any records, he barely owned pants, so he just pocketed the money. The only way you'd get a record out of GG is if he bootlegged it, which he was known to do. Bootlegging your own record, now that's punk. He'd also try to sell off what little he had available to him. He'd sell his own clothes after concerts. He'd sell whatever body fluids he had available.
What, do you want a piss?
50 cents a piss. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, you gotta make your road money.
Yeah, here, right, we got a chance to get in the bathroom so we can make some money.
After a while, he figured out that he could start selling autographs.
The first time I was in Chicago, someone stopped a car to get my autograph. I said, wow, if there are people stupid enough to pay for an autograph, take advantage of it.
Dude's out there living off of charity from fans and framing it like he's some sort of Machiavellian mastermind. In other news, please remember to check out patreon.com/Dr. Hugo. In one sense, GG's life at this point was pretty tragic. He was an unkempt alcoholic whose main motivation in life was to maintain his addiction at whatever personal cost. But GG was a hard man to help. He was perfectly fine living the way he was and resisted any efforts to help him as an attempt to tame his real personality.
And basically the whole time I was in prison, I was seeing psychiatrists, and they were trying to find out, you know, what made me be this person. And the whole time I was going, I would just build this wall around myself like I've done throughout life, and I just blocked everything out because, you know, I don't really personally care what anybody thinks about what I do because it's not going to stop me from doing it.
And any semblance that GG could turn his life around came to an abrupt stop in 1985.
1985. That was the beginning right there. That was the first time that GG defecated on stage.
This was the moment that the madman of Manchester really went off the rails. Not only that, but it also set the standard for what people could expect from him. Defecating on stage became one of his signature moves, which he'd replicate throughout the rest of his career through the help of laxatives.
Do you have any medical problems with your, does you take X-Lax frequently before gigs? Well, I'll tell you. Any intestinal problems? I'll tell you. For the last 3 or 4 years, I have been occasionally shitting blood. Did you ever get it checked out? No.
This was, by far, the most dangerous stunt that GG did. Here's an interesting historical tidbit. The first recorded use of poison in human history is arrow poison. The word toxic actually comes from the old Greek word toxikos,
which means pertaining to arrows or archery.
Different cultures had their own recipes for making arrow poison, but one of the simplest ways of doing it was to dip your arrows in human feces. This ensures that even if the arrow itself doesn't kill your target, the ensuing infection will. Now keep in mind that GG tended to get covered in cuts and wounds throughout the show, wounds that he would then smear with his own feces, effectively exposing himself to ancient civilization's version of chemical warfare. GG had many near-fatal experiences because of this. 1985 in particular was a rough year, as self-induced blood poisoning would take him out of commission for months at a time. Musically, GG shifted from a clean pop-punk sound to a dirty, lo-fi hardcore punk. The lyrics, in turn, became comically edgy. GG writes songs like a 15-year-old kid on a Monster Energy bender, complete with spelling mistakes.
Give us an example of a lyric. Can you give us a lyric?
Well, we've got one called I Love Nothing. You know, I'm a cold nothing will hitch. I was a fetus-infected son of a people in possessions only slow me down. I'm on a burning bridge. You're in my way, you're going down.
Though GG is still capable of pulling up some truly catchy hooks that get stuck in my head for days, which is a problem because I cannot sing these songs in public. As GG became more extreme, his audience became more extreme as well. His concerts became a battlefield between the audience and GG Allin.
Didn't pay anything, don't deserve anything. Here, have a chair. Here, take it back, GG.
This sort of animosity between him and his fans was exactly what GG wanted.
But my art, real art, has to be challenging. and it must go beyond all normal expectations of anything. There has to be no limit till the absolute end.
He appeared at Exit one time not too long ago, and he asked the audience, he says, everybody who loves me, please come up to the stage. And about 25 people walked up to the stage, and he maced them all.
After a while, GG and the band had to start parking the tour van a few blocks away from the gig to stop their loyal fans from slashing their tires. Eventually, they just stopped carrying their own equipment altogether so that they could escape the venues quicker.
Getting out of a venue quickly when you're trying to carry amps and drums and all that that wasn't working, so we stopped bringing equipment. We don't even bring equipment to this day.
As you can imagine, clubs hated dealing with GG and his fans smashing their venue to bits. Once the clubs who booked them got wind of GG's reputation, they'd usually cancel immediately. Those who would let him play usually cut the power after 2-3 songs.
You gonna shut us off? Because you don't want the quiet, done it? Oh, you! Because you're naked! So what if I'm naked?
Sometimes, the venues tried to sue him for damages after the fact, like this club right here trying to sue GG Allin for $2 million, which, you know, good luck getting $2 from this guy. In fact, between the money that GG spent on paying for material damages, bail, and hospital bills, a GG Allin tour was doomed to lose money. With cash drying up and his touring life in jeopardy, GG was on a downward spiral. And if you listen to GG's discography in chronological order, you can almost hear his mental decline in real time. In the mid to late 80s, his drinking reached a new apex, and he was becoming more and more erratic, causing him to burn whatever bridges he still had. For example, here's a prank he pulled on one of his friends after a night of heavy drinking.
We broke into her apartment one night, and before I left, I took her 2 little cats and put them in the freezer. The next day, she would come home and discover 2 frozen stiff cats stuck to the inside. She immediately knew I'd been there. Amidst this chaos, GG had a child. Throughout the years, GG would have an on and off relationship with a girl named Tracy. After a few years of being together, Tracy ended up becoming pregnant. After finding this out, GG responded, "Fuck it, I might die soon, so you better have it." And in 1986, Tracy gave birth to their daughter, Nico Ann, named after Nico from the Velvet Underground and the song Ann by the Stooges. GG was about as good of a father as you would expect, locking himself away in his room and neglecting any fatherly responsibilities. GG and Tracy would fight constantly, and after a particularly violent altercation that ended in Tracy being sent to the hospital, GG was hit with a restraining order. That meant that GG got his tiny, roach-infested apartment all to himself. And there he spent his days, alone, drinking till he passed out, only leaving his room for quick phone calls or to stock up on food or alcohol. The only thing going up for GG was his reputation. Despite not finding much success on the road, word about GG Allin had spread all across the country, so much so that he was, for the first time, invited onto national television. In 1988, GG Allin was invited to the Morton Downey Jr. show to discuss censorship and rock and roll. Now, I say invited because GG never made it onto the air.
I want to tell you about a group. We had a group that was going to be on with us tonight. We brought them in, put them up at the Hilton Hotel. We were informed that they were boisterous, loud, they didn't want them there.
The showrunners had booked a room for GG and his current band, The Murderers, at the Hilton Hotel in Secaucus, New Jersey. The smell was cause enough for alarm. GG walked up to the register with a bottle in each hand and said, "We're here to do the Downey show. Where are our rooms?" Without waiting for any reply, GG and the band found the hotel lounge and began stealing all the peanuts at every table. The Hilton basically kicked them out immediately, leading the producers to give them new rooms at the Red Roof Inn.
May I see on the prompter, please, the results of their stay at the Red Roof Inn? And this is a group, all right, let me see it. We've had to block out bottom word there, which you know it's obviously the F word.
GG and his entourage had completely smashed the hotel room, breaking TVs, air conditioners, windows, walls, causing thousands of dollars in damages. The hotel called the police and GG was arrested. By the time he was bailed out, it was too late. But in a way, this might actually have helped GG in the long run. As the late 80s approached, demand for GG Allin was great enough that club owners reluctantly started booking him again, hoping that the large audience turnout would offset any damage to the venue. As GG toured on, he kept trying to outdo himself, racking up many prison stays and hospital visits in the process. But at some point, there was only one way he could possibly up the ante.
And the ultimate performance would be when I have reached my peak, and I'm not there yet, so don't you all clap when I say this. I'll commit but I'll take your kids with me.
What does that mean? You'll take our kids with you?
Whatever I just said, I'll take them with me.
In 1989, GG proclaimed that he was going to off himself on stage on Halloween 1989, which later got changed to Halloween 1990. Then Halloween 1992, then it got delayed a bit more, but he was definitely gonna do it.
But I never cried wolf. When I say I'm gonna myself on October 31st, 1990, I'm gonna do it.
GG took out several zine ads for the occasion, making sure to publicize this event as much as possible. The methods he claimed he would use ranged from taking a rifle and unloading it into the audience and then himself, to shoving a stick of dynamite up his ass and diving into the audience. What, is he trying to take out the fucking Roadrunner? No one knew whether or not GG would actually carry out this promise. However, by 1989, it looked like he might not get the opportunity to try at all. The amount of self-abuse he was subjecting himself to on a daily basis was getting to him. He looked sick, getting thinner and thinner by the week. It looked like he might drop dead from natural causes at any second. Though ultimately, GG's life would be saved by the thing he hated the most. At this point, GG had been arrested dozens of times, and the court dates were starting to pile up. He wasn't a fugitive per se, but he had racked up arrest warrants in a lot of states, and he needed to move carefully. This was causing GG a lot of paranoia. He became convinced someone was out to get him, trailing his movements, tapping his phones, and probing the bars he frequented. And as it turns out, he was absolutely right. In 1989, while GG was going to the bank, he was arrested by none other than the US Secret Service. Now, how did GG Allin get on the radar of the federal government? Well, GG had recently been in contact with several notorious criminals, including serial killer John Wayne Gacy.
You know, I write to John Wayne Gacy. Well, that's not why I write to him, and that's never why I wrote to him. It was never my intention. I wrote to him because he was somebody that I could relate to. He was a smart person. I could tell him things that I couldn't tell anybody else, and we had some very therapeutic conversations for me. I mean, he was like a father to me. You know, I didn't give a who he killed. You know, for the most part, I wish he'd have killed more people. You know, I think they should let him out every once in a while and let him run wild.
Now, Gacy wasn't the issue. Lots of people talked to Gacy. What really got him in trouble was when he started talking to John Hinckley Jr.
One of the bullets that Hinckley fired ricocheted off the presidential limousine, entered Ronald Reagan's body, and lodged within an inch of the president's heart, nearly killing him.
Associating with Hinckley in 1989 was a very quick way to get yourself a visit by the feds, and GG was no exception. They interrogated him for a few hours and concluded pretty quickly that GG Allin did not pose an immediate danger to the president. However, they did find that he had a felony warrant out for him in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and so they extradited him. Prior to all of this, GG had been approached by a fan, Leslie, who proclaimed that she and GG were bound to be married someday. Iggy Pop and Sid Vicious are kid stuff next to GG Allin, but Leslie says that when you get past all that, I'm sure he's a brilliant individual. Leslie thinks GG Allin confronts his audience with the truth. I knew there had to be some drive behind it. That's really what led to my curiosity of wanting to meet him. Leslie and GG would eventually hook up while GG was on a trip to Michigan. The encounter lasted over several days and ended with Leslie being committed to Michigan University Hospital for almost 2 weeks,
with burns so severe she needed skin grafts.
By the time she pressed charges, GG had long since fled the state of Michigan. Though now, being extradited, he had no other option than to face the consequences of his actions. GG himself would claim that this ordeal was a masochistic exercise requested by Leslie herself.
Okay, I cut her, I burned her, I drank her blood, but she also did the same to me. It was a consensual agreement, but in the courtroom, they said that I was to blame because I'm GG Allin. I'm the king of the underground. They need to nail me to a cross.
This did little to help his case. In the aftermath of the trial, GG Allin would both claim that she lied about the encounter and also that she got what she deserved, narcissist's prayer and all that. GG Allin pleaded no contest to the charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Allin would later sue the state of Michigan for $3 million for an unfair trial, discrimination, and loss of income and possible damage to his career, though this lawsuit ultimately went nowhere. From a physical point of view, prison might have actually been a step up for GG. It curbed his alcohol habit, and while the food wasn't great, it was at least slightly more nutritious than what GG had been eating before. On a mental level though, prison was very bad for GG Allin. Got to thinking about the terms in which the direction of my life is taking and realizing I have no control over it. And although I enjoy my own company, I am very lonely. GG spent most of his time alone, ruminating to an unhealthy amount. His paranoia grew even worse, especially after being tracked down by the Secret Service. He felt as if the US government saw him and his brand of rock and roll as a threat to the nation.
They had to do something with me. What are we gonna do with this guy? He's out there causing so much trouble. We can't stop him. He's breaking the law every time he does a show. Every time I do a show, I break at least 3 laws when I walk on the stage. So we'll use this to put him in prison, and then in 2 years, everybody will forget about him and he'll go away. This is what we want.
He started developing delusions of grandeur, increasingly viewing himself as a Christ-like figure, out to do revenge on the world.
You've got to, I'm me and I'm everything. I'm God, I'm the devil, I'm everything, because that's who I am. I'm just put everything into me.
He would continue running the show from prison, doing as many interviews as he could via mail or over the phone. These interviews would take on an increasingly ideological tone. While in prison, GG would write a manifesto he called the GG Allin Mission. I was born Jesus Christ Allin in 1956 in Lancaster, New Hampshire. The Jesus Christ they preach about in the Bible is a phony imposter, just a crutch for the cripples to lean on. That weak shit. I am the man to deal with. When I was born in 1956, rock and roll first started taking off. Why do you think that was? Because I created it. I created Elvis. I made it all happen. Even before I was born, I was plotting. This is the decade for the final bloody mutilation. Time to get rock and roll out of the hands of the masses and back to the people who will not accept comfort or conformity at any cost. Then I will commit on stage, and the blood of rock and roll will become the poison of the universe forever. He ends the manifesto by encouraging his fans to go to their local record shop and buy as many GG Allin records as they can to support his message. GG told Merle to keep practicing with their current band, the Murder Junkies, till he came out of prison, because he was going to return, and when he did, the world would know.
Prison at all times was plotting my revenge from the day I walked out that door. There wasn't one day that didn't go by that I didn't think I'm going to get major revenge on society and the people who put me here.
When GG got out, he wanted to go out and cause havoc immediately, but he was out on parole, and he was under no circumstances allowed to leave the state of Michigan. But then he got a call from an NYC film student looking to make a GG Allin documentary.
Todd, you're an NYU
do any
student?
uniform off.
You booked GG's band in your school?
Yeah, well, I'm doing a documentary film on GG through NYU Film School, and
that film student was none other than Todd Phillips. Just in case you thought Joker was his only film about a middle-aged guy living in a society. Now, to make this documentary a reality, Todd needed to convince GG to risk potential prison time and violate his parole to come to New York City. Turns out, that wasn't very difficult to do. I can't leave Michigan, but if you send me a bus ticket, kid. He would then go on tour as a wanted man, doing as many shows as he could before getting caught. But this wasn't the GG that people knew. Before he went to prison, GG's shows usually ended up doing more damage to himself than the audience, but not these shows.
Well, before he went to prison, there was a lot more self-mutilating on stage. When he got out of prison, there was a lot more violence directed to the crowd. He was pissed.
Todd had the film crew wear bright orange so that GG wouldn't pummel them to mash during the concerts. GG's luck would eventually run out by the time he reached San Antonio, Texas, where a fight between GG and an audience member ended with GG being jumped by a dozen guys. When the police showed up, GG was too beaten and dazed to make his escape.
I was kind of out of it because why was I getting arrested to begin with? What was happening here? Why was this guy handcuffing me? And you know, I had just been through my show and I was tired, I was disillusioned, I'd been drinking.
At the hospital, they took x-rays to confirm GG had a broken hand, broken jaw, glass lodged all throughout his body, and he had deep lacerations in his head. The doctor said he required stitches, but Allin refused. He told the doctor he liked the scars. Allin was handcuffed to a hospital bed as they removed pieces of glass from his entire body. GG was then extradited back to Michigan, where he was to serve another year for violating his parole. The finished documentary, titled Hated in the Nation, would premiere in 1993, and GG was released from jail just in time to catch the premiere. GG actually embraced me after seeing it, Philip says with obvious relief, and he's not the kind of guy I'd expect too many compliments from. Then GG got wasted during the premiere and started throwing beer bottles at the screen, sending a woman to the hospital, ending the screening early. For Todd, Hated in the Nation would end up launching his career. It was even one of John Waters' favorite films of 1993. That's how you know it's foul. But as for GG, he still had some unfinished business to attend to. After maxing out his parole in Michigan, GG resurfaced with fresh hatred for the world, ready to channel this energy onto tape. He had ordered the Murder Junkies to keep working on songs while he was in prison, which they sent a demo of to GG. GG came back almost immediately, having written an entire album's worth of lyrics in just 3 days. The name of the album was Brutality and Bloodshed for All. The first thing you notice about this album is how comparatively good it sounds. Compared to the garbled noise of the late 80s records, which bordered on black metal levels of production, Bloodshed sounds clear and focused, with a tight backing band providing a strong foundation for the songs. Instrumentally, this is probably GG's best record. The second thing you notice about this album is the absolute state of GG's voice. Good lord, I have never seen anyone rupture their voice this badly. He sounds like he lives on Sesame Street. He sounds ridiculous, but I don't know, it kinda grew on me. The older GG Allin records always had a layer of snark to them. Early GG Allin sounded like he was gonna TP your house and microwave your hamster. Meanwhile, this GG Allin sounds like he's gonna kill you. It's the sound of barely contained rage. It really fits in with the rest of the record. The lyrics are definitely GG Allin, but this time with a much greater focus on the GG Allin mission, whether that is declaring his allegiance to the rock and roll underground, swearing revenge on society, or proclaiming himself the Messiah. The lyrics definitely feel more sincere this time around, like he's not messing around anymore. There are some moments here that feel like a bit of a rush job though, like this bit in Kill the Police, where GG goes, "I hope you all die on the street today. I hope you all die in a deadly way." Like, I can definitely believe that he wrote this album in 3 days. But my favorite lyrical moment from GG is probably "Shove That Warrant Up Your Ass," where all the verses are just GG Allin name-dropping every city where he has outstanding warrants. Now that's probably the most punk song I've ever heard. GG in general was getting a lot more ambitious around this time. No longer satisfied by causing carnage in the US, GG was looking to conquer the world.
I understand you're going to be going to Europe next year when you're released. We're hoping, if I can get a passport.
Dude, imagine sitting next to GG Allin on a transatlantic flight.
I came in on a sold-out flight. It was overbooked, and there was a seat beside me that was empty. Every other seat in the plane was taken, and the guy on the end asked if he could move.
But for now, he'd have to settle for the US. After recording the Bloodshed album, he'd embark on what he declared would be the most devastating tour yet, the Terror in America tour.
Right, and so I guess nothing's changed. It's just as you.
Well, it's changed for the more violent. I'm really pissed off now. I mean, I'm out with a fury, and if they thought that putting me in prison was going to stop me, then obviously they thought wrong.
This tour would see him double down on his propensity for violence. Any GG show that didn't end in at least one hospital ride was considered a miracle.
Dig the glass. If there's any glass in there, just pick it out.
It's bleeding.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
But while he was still able to bring it on stage, off stage, GG was slowing down. At this point, GG had just turned 36. Considering the average life expectancy for an American male was 72 at the time, GG had just taken his first step into middle age, and it was starting to show.
I can't bend that any more than that. I broke it, and I can set it wrong. And this finger here came out of it. I don't have a lot of feeling in here, so when I move that finger, I can't bend that mother off.
His drinking had resumed as normal, though his drug habits had for the most part been replaced by prescription Valium, which he used to conk out on the tour bus. The first leg of the Terror in America tour went about as promised, culminating in a concert at the gas station in New York City. At this point, GG was quite sick. He was still reeling from blood poisoning, for which he had left the hospital early, both due to boredom and to dodge the hospital bills. But he was still determined to put on a show. The show would be forcefully plugged after just a few songs, leaving GG and his entourage to roam the streets.
Police, man, let's go. I'm not getting arrested. No, I've done my time.
Let's go. All right, now close the door. Close the door.
GG, until we meet again.
GG escaped the police in a taxi and ended up going to a friend's apartment. There, he would go on the biggest bender he'd been on in a long time, ending the night passed out on the floor.
Also, 4 nights after GG Allin taped this broadcast, he gave his last concert here in New York. The next day, GG Allin was found dead. A police investigation is underway into the cause of his death, but a drug overdose is suspected.
I mean, I can imagine that, you know, the whole leaving of your body experience would be quite a high. You know, I think about it a lot, and I think, you know, what I really think about is when I do that final show and I'm dead on stage. I'm thinking that I might be able to just float over the audience and watch the reactions of the people as I lie there bleeding. I think that I will actually be able to see what goes on. That really kind of excites me too.
On the 28th of June 1993, GG Allin was found dead. The cause of death was deemed to be a heroin overdose. Not only was he still weak from blood poisoning, his system also contained a cocktail of other substances, including alcohol, cocaine, and one mystery drug that he snatched from someone in the audience earlier that day. He had snot coming out of his nose and blood coming out of his mouth, and a big scowl on his face. It was typical GG. His funeral was held at Littleton, New Hampshire. It was attended by his friends, the family that's still associated with him, and a couple of GG's fans. GG was buried in his jockstrap, with a bottle of Jim Beam by his side. Fittingly enough, the funeral was open casket, and GG looked worse than ever. There were gouges and scars everywhere, and he was discolored, and frankly, starting to go bad after 5 days. He was leaking embalming fluid noticeably. People were putting stickers on the casket, pushing pills and liquor into GG's mouth, having their smiling pictures taken up by his face. It was as though everyone else was finally having their way with him. Most common phrase of the night had to be, "He would have wanted it this way." People lifted up his head and examined the stitching on the back, but the medical examiner cut his head open to remove his brain. It ruined his new tattoo. Pictures from the funeral would be used for the back cover of the upcoming album, which would be released a few weeks later by the ironically named Alive Records.
I heard the new record. Have you heard the cover of his new record?
I know.
It's him in a casket and the band standing around the casket like... I swear to God.
GG still sings.
GG would be buried in his former hometown of Littleton. Though he would not rest in peace, GG's grave would become a notorious tourist location for the town of Littleton, as his fans traveled for miles to go to the spot where he was buried. These certainly aren't the kind of people we want in the cemetery. They have parties down there, and people defecate and urinate on the graves and tip over the monuments. These people have killed cats and buried them down there. In 2003, when Merle and the Jabbers were set to do a 10-year anniversary concert for GG's death, they were met with a small uproar, with some locals demanding to have GG's body exhumed and transferred to a different cemetery. "We're telling people to have a good time and be respectful," Merle Allin said. "Besides, we're not some rebellious 20-year-olds. We're in our 40s. The concert came and went without any issues. In the following years, GG's headstone would continue to be the subject of vandalism.
You want me to go piss on your mother's grave, asshole?
In 2010, GG's headstone was knocked off its base by a fan.
This was where his headstone stood until some jackass knocked it off the platform here.
That was the final straw. His headstone was finally removed from Littleton Cemetery and was no longer accessible by the public. In 2024, it finally resurfaced at the California Museum of Death, where it remains to this day.
And most people go through life very bland and very boring, and they accept what's given to them. They accept what people teach them and what people tell them. I have said no over and over again to authority. Authority cannot tell me what to do. The schools cannot tell me what to do, because from day one I never listened to them.
I think most GG Allin fans like the idea of GG Allin, someone who is seemingly immune from political correctness or really any doctrine of human decency. And GG Allin lived his life with nothing to lose, and because of that he had absolute freedom to say anything or indulge any impulse he wanted.
I think a lot of people wish sometimes maybe they could do what I do, but just really don't have the balls to do it.
Even his live performances, as disgusting as they were an extension of that. They were a demonstration of his complete freedom to express himself. That was the impression I had of GG Allin going into this video, though that's not the impression I have of him now. It's very easy to romanticize the life of an outlaw living on the outskirts of society, who does whatever he wants and doesn't give a damn what anyone else thinks. But GG Allin is not a cattle-stealing, horse-riding kind of outlaw, okay? He's a grooming minors kind of outlaw.
Yes, I will do anything for GG Allin. I will die for him. I will do anything for him. He is my God. He is my daddy, and I will do it all for him. He
adopted her. When she came out and followed me on the road, I told her, I showed her more things than her daddy could ever show her.
He is my daddy.
Obviously, no one likes GG Allin because they think he's a good guy, but I think if people knew how much of an asshole he was, he'd probably be held in lower esteem. I've seen a lot of modern punk scenes trying to distance themselves from him, and I can definitely see why.
But even though my respect for GG Allin has admittedly fallen considerably through making this video, I do still think he's a very fascinating dude. GG Allin is a look at an extreme case of the human condition. He occupies a spot in history that very, very few others hold. GG Allin is the story of a man who refused to compromise with any semblance of society.
It's also a story of why that's a terrible, terrible idea.
I wonder what she's doing. I wonder where she'll come. Somewhere there's a girl for Bill Weber, but until then he'll jerk till he comes. Oh, I'll never get over those blue eyes. I see them everywhere. I miss those arms. Is this better than Johnny Cash was tonight? We're